Chapter 1. Before the Silence Broke. My name is Madeline Hart. I was 27 and my life looked simple from the outside. But inside, I felt something empty. My days moved slowly. I worked from home. I made small websites for small stores. I talked to clients only through emails. I smiled on the screen, but when the call ended, the house became quiet again. I felt alone in a way I could not explain to anyone. Sometimes I told myself, "You are strong. You can live like this." But some nights I whispered, "I wish someone was here." Money was also a problem. Work was not regular. Some months were good. Some months were difficult. One evening, when I was checking my bank balance, I felt a deep pain in my chest. I said softly, "I need to do something." I had one guest room. It was empty for years. I thought maybe I should rent it. I did not like the idea of sharing my space, but I needed money, and I needed a little human voice around me. I wanted someone to say good morning to me. I wanted to hear a door open, not just the sound of my own footsteps. I created a small profile on a rental website. I typed everything slowly. I wrote, "Safe home, clean room, quiet place." My hands shook a little because opening your home to a stranger is not a small step. I kept telling myself, "It will be fine." But a small voice in my heart said, "What if it is not fine?" Still, I clicked the submit button. I closed my laptop and sat quietly. I hoped something good would happen. I hoped someone kind would come. The next afternoon, I received a message. A man named Ethan Wade wanted to stay for 1 week. His picture showed a simple, calm face. He wrote politely. He said, "I am traveling for work. I just need a quiet room." I read his message again and again. I tried to feel if something was wrong, but everything looked normal. He even paid instantly. I felt a small relief. I whispered, "Maybe this is the right choice." I accepted his request. That night, I sat on my couch and thought about my life. I thought about my mother, who always told me, "You should not stay alone so much." I thought about the day I moved to this house and believed it would feel like freedom. But freedom can turn into loneliness when there is no one to share it with. I pressed my hand on my heart and said softly, "Please, let this be good." The next morning, I cleaned the guest room again. Even though it was already clean, I wanted everything to look perfect. I wanted Ethan to feel safe. I wanted myself to feel safe. As I folded a blanket, I felt something emotional inside me. I said out loud, "Maybe I just need someone to talk to." My voice sounded small, but it was honest. Later that day, I sat near my phone, waiting for the time he said he would arrive. I felt nervous, but also hopeful. I told myself, a guest is not a family, a guest is not a friend, but maybe a guest can make the house feel alive for a little while. I did not want much. I only wanted a human voice in the same house. I wanted a simple hello at the end of the day. When the doorbell finally rang, my heart jumped. I stood still for a moment. I did not understand why I felt emotional. Maybe because silence had been my only companion for too long. I opened the door gently. A tall man stood there with a small suitcase. He smiled softly and said, "Hi, I'm Ethan. Thank you for letting me stay." Something in his voice felt calm. Something in his face felt quiet. I stepped back and said, "Come in. The room is ready." As he walked inside, I felt something change in my house. It was not loud. It was not big. It was just a soft shift, like someone pressed a warm hand on a cold heart. For the first time in many months, someone was standing in my home, someone who was not me. I took a long breath. I said to myself, maybe my life will feel different now. I hoped it would feel better. I hoped I had made the right decision. I did not know anything about what was coming. I only knew one thing at that moment. My silent life had finally broken. Chapter 2. A guest named Ethan placed his suitcase near the guest room door, and for a moment I watched him quietly. It felt strange to see another person move inside my home. My heart felt warm but nervous. He stood straight, gave a small smile, and said, "I hope I am not disturbing your routine." His voice was soft. I said gently, "No, it's fine. I am glad you're here." I surprised myself because I meant it. I had been alone for too long, and just hearing another human voice felt like a small gift. When he thanked me again, I nodded and said, "I don't get many visitors." He looked at me for a second, almost kindly, and said, "Maybe now you won't feel so alone." That line touched something deep inside me. It had been years since anyone noticed that I was lonely. We sat at the table for a few minutes. I tried to act normal, but my hands felt warm, almost shy. He told me he was a writer working on a travel book. He said he needed a quiet place to finish it. I listened carefully. I told him, "I hope you find peace here." He smiled and said, "I think I already have." That line made my chest feel heavy, but not in a bad way. It felt emotional, like someone had finally spoken gently to me after months of silence. I looked down at my hands because I did not know how to answer kindness. After a moment, he said, "Thank you for trusting me." I replied softly, "I am trying to trust again." He did not ask more, and I liked that later that night, I worked on my laptop while he stayed in his room. I kept thinking about him. Not in a romantic way, but in a human way. I kept thinking about how strange it felt to not eat dinner alone. I kept hearing his small movements in the hallway, and each sound reminded me that I was not invisible in this world. When he stepped into the kitchen to get a glass of water, he said, "I hope I am settling in well." I said, "You are doing fine." Then he said something that stayed in my heart. Sometimes people enter our lives for a reason. I did not reply, but inside, I wondered if I had opened the door to a new beginning. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. I heard him talking quietly on the phone in the living room. His tone was polite and steady. I could not hear the words, but his voice felt calm. When he saw me, he ended the call quickly and said, "Good morning." I nodded and said, "Good morning, Ethan." I felt like we were becoming familiar, like two gentle strangers trying to understand each other's silence. He asked if I wanted coffee. I said yes, even though I rarely drank it. I just wanted someone to sit with me for a moment. While pouring it, he said softly, "Life feels lighter when someone shares a morning with you." I felt that line in my chest, I told him. I forgot how that feels. During the day, he stayed mostly in his room. Sometimes I heard him typing. Sometimes I heard him reading out loud. His voice made the house feel warm again. I worked on my website project, but my mind kept drifting. I thought about how opened windows feel when fresh air enters a silent room. I felt like Ethan was that fresh air. When he stepped out for a short walk, he said, "I like peaceful streets." I nodded and said, "Everything here is slow. You will adjust soon." He smiled slightly and replied, "I already feel safe." That word, safe, hit me hard. I did not feel safe for years. Hearing someone say they felt safe in my home gave me a strange emotional comfort. In the evening, we talked for a few minutes. He told me he traveled often and never stayed in one place for too long. I told him I used to move a lot too, and he said, "Maybe that's why you look tired in your soul." I felt tears in my eyes for a second. No one had ever described my heart that honestly. I whispered, "Maybe you are right." He did not laugh. He did not ask questions. He just nodded and said, "It's okay to be tired." I felt something soften inside me. Before going to his room, he said, "If you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here for a week." I smiled, a real one this time, and said, "Thank you. Maybe I do need that." When he closed the door, I sat alone in the living room, but this time the silence felt different. It felt warm, not empty, not painful. I whispered to myself, maybe life is giving me a small chance. I did not know what the future held. I did not know what this man would mean in my life. But in that moment, I felt safe in my own house. I felt less alone. I felt like maybe the darkness in my heart was slowly fading. I held that feeling close because I had waited too long for something simple and human. I did not know that this soft beginning was the start of something I could never imagine.
Don't forget to subscribe channel Basic English Story and turn on notifications.
Maybe this was a good decision. But then I started noticing small things, tiny things that did not look dangerous at first, but still touched a soft fear inside my heart. It started with something simple. His phone rang one night. It rang again the next morning and again the next afternoon. He always looked at the screen, but he never answered. Not once. I tried to ignore it, but a strange thought came to my mind. I said softly, "Why would someone avoid every call?" When I asked him gently, he smiled and said, "It's nothing important." His smile was warm, but something behind it felt quiet and closed. Another day, I walked past his room. The door was slightly open. His laptop was on the table, but shut. Completely shut. For someone who said he was writing a book, it felt unusual, I told myself. Maybe he writes on paper. But I never saw a notebook in his hands. Not even once. Still, I did not want to make him uncomfortable. I tried to stay calm, but a small uneasiness started touching my chest. One afternoon, when I was working on my laptop in the living room, he asked me a question that felt odd. He said, "Do you usually stay home all day?" I paused. I said, "Most days, yes." He nodded slowly and said, "And people don't visit you often?" His voice was soft, but the question felt deeper than it should. I forced a smile and said, "I like being alone." He looked at me for a moment and then said, "Alone is a strong word, Madeline." His tone was emotional, almost sad, as if he understood loneliness too well, but something about the way he said it made my heart feel tight. That night, I woke up from a small sound. I sat up. I listened. The house was silent, but I heard a soft step in the hallway. Not fast, not slow. Just one quiet step. I told myself it was nothing. I did not open my door. I only placed my hand on my chest and whispered, "Calm down." The next morning, Ethan smiled like nothing happened. He said, "Did you sleep well?" I nodded because I didn't want to show fear. He said softly, "If you ever feel scared, you can tell me." Those words should have comforted me, but they didn't. They confused me. Why did he think I felt scared? Later that night, I could not sleep again. Something inside me felt uneasy, so I walked to the kitchen to drink water. As I passed the window, I saw him in the backyard. He was standing completely still. His eyes were fixed on the empty street outside. He did not move. He did not sit. He just stood there like he was waiting for something or someone. A cold feeling spread in my stomach. I whispered, "Ethan?" But he did not hear me. Or maybe he did not want to show that he heard me. I stepped back slowly. I went to my room and closed the door quietly. The next morning, I tried to ask him about it. I said, "Were you outside last night?" He looked at me for a second too long. Then he said, "I like fresh air." His face looked calm, but his eyes looked different. I felt something strange inside me, something soft but worrying. I told myself, "Do not overthink." But the worry stayed. During lunch, he asked me gently, "Do you ever feel someone might need you?" I said, "Not really." He smiled and said, "Sometimes people's lives change because of one small thing." I felt emotional for a moment because his words touched something inside me, but I also felt confused. I did not know what he really meant. One evening, he stood in the hallway and asked, "Do you feel safe when you live alone?" His voice was soft, but the question felt too personal. I looked down and said, "I try to." He nodded slowly and said, "Safety is important." I felt a sudden pain in my stomach. I did not know why his words were not wrong, but his tone sounded different. A little later, he asked, "Do you lock your doors at night?" I gave a small laugh to hide my discomfort. I said, "Of course." He smiled and said, "Good. I'm glad you do." The way he said it made me swallow slowly. I did not understand what he meant, but something in my heart whispered, "Stay careful." That night, I could not focus on my work. I thought about his questions. I thought about the backyard. I thought about the unanswered phone calls, and the closed laptop, and his long looks. Something inside me felt heavy. I sat on my bed and whispered, "Why does my heart feel scared when nothing has happened?" But something had changed. My house no longer felt like only mine. My silence was no longer soft. My peace was no longer warm. I still trusted Ethan, but a small part of me began to think, maybe I should watch things more closely. I did not know that this soft fear was the first small step into something much bigger.
Don't forget to subscribe channel Basic English Story and turn on notifications.
Chapter 4. The Real Andrew Calls. The strange feeling inside me grew with every small moment. I tried to tell myself that everything was fine, but my heart knew something was changing in the wrong direction. On the third day, I was working on my laptop when my phone rang. The number was unknown. I almost did not answer it, but something inside me said, "Pick it up." I pressed the green button slowly. A calm male voice said, "Hello, this is Andrew Collins. I am calling about the room I rented. I will arrive next week. I just wanted to confirm the address." For a second, I felt like the world stopped. My heart hit my chest. I whispered, "Your name is Andrew?" The man said yes. His voice was normal, honest, nothing strange. I felt my hands shake. I said softly, You are coming next week?" He said, "Yes, is everything okay?" But nothing was okay, because someone named Ethan Wade was already living in my house. Someone who used this man's name. Someone who entered using another identity. Someone I trusted. I felt a cold fear climb up my back. I could hear Ethan in the kitchen behind me. I lowered my voice and whispered, "You said you rented the room?" The man replied, "Yes, I hope that is still fine." I could not breathe for a moment. I ended the call quickly and held my phone tightly. My fingers felt cold. My eyes filled with fear. The truth was clear now. Ethan was not who he said he was. A stranger was living inside my home. I walked into the living room slowly. My steps felt heavy. Ethan was pouring water into a glass. He turned and smiled like everything was normal. He asked, "You look pale. Are you okay?" I forced a small smile and said, "Yes, I'm fine." But he kept looking at me, as if he could hear the fear inside me. I sat at the table, trying to steady my breath. I said softly, "Ethan, where did you say you were from?" He lifted his eyes slowly. He did not blink. He said gently, "Don't you remember?" My throat felt dry. I whispered, "Just remind me." He gave a strange smile and said, "I think you already know." That line broke the air around me. He knew. He knew that I knew. And he was calm about it. I stood up slowly. I said, "I'm tired. I think I will rest for a while." He nodded, but the way he watched me made my skin feel tight. I walked to my room and closed the door. My hands shook as I turned the lock. I leaned my head against the door and whispered, "Dear God, what have I done?" I sat on the floor. My heart was beating too fast. I wanted to cry, but the fear was too strong. I tried to understand him. Who was he? What did he want? Why did he use a fake name? Why did he choose my house? I thought of his strange questions. I thought of him standing in the yard at night. I thought of the phone calls he never answered. All the pieces came together now, and the picture was terrifying. I knew I could not stay there. I had to leave the house, but I needed to stay calm. I needed to keep him unaware. I whispered, "Don't show fear." But fear was all I felt. After some time, I opened my door a little. Ethan was sitting in the living room writing something on a small paper. He did not look at me, but I could feel his awareness. I went back inside. I knew I had to escape in silence. Later that night, I heard his footsteps in the hallway, one slow step, then another. He stopped right outside my door. I covered my mouth to hide my breathing. I felt tears fall down my face, but I stayed quiet. After a long moment, he walked away. I sat there, shaking. I whispered, "Please, let morning come." When the house became quiet again, I opened my door slowly. My feet felt weak, but my mind said, "Move. Now." I walked toward the front door. Every breath felt heavy, every second felt long. I reached for the door lock. My fingers were shaking. I thought maybe I could make it. Maybe I could run before he noticed. Then I heard his voice behind me, soft, calm, terrifying. "Going somewhere, Madeline?" I turned around fast. I saw him standing in the living room, half shadow, half smile. My heart almost stopped. I said, "I just need something from the store." He stepped closer. His tone was gentle, but his words were heavy. "You know I am not Andrew, don't you?" I swallowed hard. I whispered, "Who are you?" He did not answer my question. He only said, "Sit down. I need to explain something." But I did not want to sit. I did not want to hear him. I did not want to be near him. My breath became fast. My fear became stronger. I moved back slowly toward the door. He took one step. I took another backward. I felt the small table behind me. My fingers touched something metal. A lamp. My mind said, "This is your chance." My fear said, "You will not get another moment." I closed my eyes for 1 second and whispered, "Please give me strength." Then I pushed him with all the power I had. Chapter 5. Midnight Escape. When I pushed him, I did not think. My body moved before my mind. Ethan stepped back, surprised for just a second. That second gave me hope. I ran to the door as fast as I could, but my hands were shaking so much that I could not turn the lock. My mind screamed, "Open it! Open it now!" I could hear him behind me, his breath, his slow steps. My heart felt like it would break my chest. I turned the lock at the last moment and pulled the door open. Cold air hit my face, but all I felt was fear. I ran outside barefoot. I screamed as loud as my voice allowed. "Help me!" I cried. "Please, someone help me!" My legs felt weak. My throat burned. My eyes blurred from tears. I did not look back because I did not want to see him behind me. I only ran. Lights turned on in the houses around me. I heard doors opening. My neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, rushed out and said, "Madeline, what happened? Why are you shaking?" I fell to my knees and cried, "There is a man inside my house. He lied to me. He is not who he said he is." My voice broke in pieces. She hugged me before asking anything else. She said, "You're safe now. You're safe, honey." But inside, I did not feel safe. Not even for a second. Someone called the police immediately. I heard a man say, "Stay close, we won't leave you alone." I could hear my breath shaking. I could feel my hands going cold. I said, "He looked at me like he knew everything. I don't know what he wanted. I don't know why he came." Mrs. Jenkins held my shoulders and whispered, "You are not alone tonight. We all are here." When the police car arrived, 2 officers came to me. They asked, "Are you hurt?" I shook my head and said, "No, but I am scared." One officer knelt beside me and said softly, "We will check your house, stay with your neighbors. You're safe with us." I nodded because I had no strength to talk more. The officers entered my home with flashlights. I stood outside, hugging myself. My neighbor asked, "Did he try to touch you?" I said, "No, but he lied. He pretended to be someone else." She closed her eyes and said, "That is enough to scare any woman living alone." Her voice felt warm and real, and I felt tears fall again. I whispered, "I was so stupid." She held my face gently and said, "No, you were kind. Kindness is not a mistake." Minutes passed. My body shook the whole time. When the officers came back, one said, "Ma'am, he is gone." I felt confused. "What do you mean gone?" He said, "There is no one inside." Another officer added, "There are no bags, no clothes, nothing. It looks like no one was ever staying there." My head felt heavy. I said, "Impossible. He lived here, he slept here, he walked here." But the officer shook his head. "There's nothing inside, not a single item." My fear grew. My mind could not understand. How could someone leave so fast? How could he take everything within minutes? The officer asked, "Do you know his real name?" I whispered, "No, I only know he is not Ethan Wade." My voice cracked when I added, "I don't know who he is." The police searched the street. They checked the sides of the house. They checked the backyard. Nothing. Not a shadow. Not a footprint. One officer said, "Whoever he is, he planned this." I felt something break inside me. I said, "Why my house? Why me?" The officer said calmly, "Sometimes people target quiet homes." I felt tears fall again. I whispered, "I should have listened to my fear earlier." They asked me many questions after that. I tried to answer, but my voice kept shaking. I felt like a child. At one point, I said, "I just wanted someone to talk to. I didn't think someone could lie like this." The officer looked at me kindly and said, "You trusted him. That does not make you weak. It makes him dangerous." His words stayed in my heart. When the police finished searching, they told me they would patrol around for the night. They told me to stay with a neighbor until morning. Mrs. Jenkins held my arm and said, "You can sleep in my house tonight." I nodded because I did not want to step into my own home again. I felt like the walls remembered him. I felt like the air still carried his voice. As I sat on Mrs. Jenkins' couch, wrapped in a blanket, I whispered, "I don't know what he wanted." She squeezed my hand and said, "Sometimes we don't get answers, but we get another chance to live." Her words made me cry again. I felt tired. I felt broken. But I also felt grateful that I was still alive. That night, I did not sleep. Every sound made me jump. Every shadow made me afraid. But I also kept telling myself, "You escaped. You survived." It felt like a small light inside a dark room. a light I needed badly. This night would change my life forever. I did not know it then, but I knew one thing clearly. I would never be the same again. Chapter 6. The Vanishing Man. The next morning, I returned to my house with 2 officers walking behind me. My hands were shaking, but I tried to stay strong. I kept telling myself, "You have to face this place." The house looked quiet, but inside my chest, everything felt loud. I stepped inside slowly. Every corner of the house reminded me of last night. I whispered, "I am safe now." But I did not fully believe my own voice. One officer walked toward the guest room. "Ma'am, please stay here," he said. I nodded and stood by the living room wall. I heard drawers open. I heard the officer moving things. Then he came back and said, "Nothing. The room is empty." His voice sounded surprised. I whispered, "He lived here. He stayed here." The officer nodded gently and said, "We believe you, but this man wanted no trace behind." I sat on the couch and held my head in my hands. My heart felt heavy. Everything inside me felt confused. I said softly, "He talked to me. He ate here. He asked me questions." The officer sat across from me and said, "People like him learn how to disappear fast." His calm voice scared me more than loud words. Later, they checked the backyard again. They checked the small side gate. They checked the front. Nothing. No footprints. No sign he ever walked on my grass. I felt like I was losing my mind. I whispered, "How can a whole person vanish?" The officer replied, "Sometimes danger wears a smile. Sometimes danger knocks politely." Those words broke something inside me. By afternoon, the officers asked if I wanted support or counseling. I shook my head. I wanted to be strong, but inside, I felt like a little girl lost in a dark street. Mrs. Jenkins sat beside me and said, "You don't need to pretend to be strong, honey." I looked at her and said, "If I cry again, I won't stop." She took my hand and said, "Then cry. Cry until you breathe again." Her simple words touched my soul. I cried quietly until my chest hurt. The officers finally left. They said they would search for him. They said they would call me if they found anything. When I closed my door behind them, the silence in my house felt heavier than ever. I whispered, "Why did this happen to me?" But there was no answer, only silence. I cleaned the living room slowly, not because it was dirty, but because I wanted to take back control. I wanted the house to feel mine again. While cleaning the hall table, I noticed something under a cloth. A small folded note. My breath stopped. I picked it up with shaking hands. It had no name, just one line written in neat handwriting. "You trust too fast." My legs almost gave out. I pressed the note to my chest and whispered, "Why did you leave this? What do you want from me?" My eyes filled with fear again. I tore the note into small pieces and threw it away, but the words stayed inside my head. I kept hearing them. I kept feeling them. That night, I tried to sleep, but every sound felt like a threat. I heard the wind. I heard a bird. I heard my own heartbeat too loud. I whispered to myself, "You are safe. He is gone." But I still imagined him returning. I still imagined his voice behind me. I still imagined his soft smile hiding something dark. I opened my eyes again and stayed awake until morning. The next day, I went to stay at my cousin Laura's place for a while. She opened the door and hugged me tightly. She said, "You should have called me earlier." I said, "I didn't want to worry you." She looked at me with sad eyes and said, "You almost lost your life. Worry me next time." Her honest words made me emotional again. She gave me a warm blanket and said, "You'll stay here until you feel strong." Days passed and I tried to live normally, but normal did not come. I jumped at small noises. I checked every lock twice. Sometimes I whispered, "Why my house? Why me?" And I had no answer. The police called and said, "We cannot find him yet." That word "yet" scared me more. It meant he could return any time. One evening, when Laura went out for groceries, I sat alone on her sofa. I tried to breathe slowly. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. A message. Unknown number. "Did you miss me?" My blood turned cold. I felt like someone pulled the ground under my feet. My hands started shaking. I whispered, "No, no, no." I dropped the phone on the sofa and covered my face. Tears came without stopping. I felt helpless. I felt weak. I felt watched. When Laura came home, she saw my face and said, "What happened? Tell me." I handed her the phone with trembling fingers. She gasped and said, "We are calling the police right now." She hugged me tight and said, "You will not go through this alone. Not again." That night, I stared at the wall. My heart breaking slowly, I whispered to myself, "He knows where I am. He found me." Fear felt like a shadow that followed me everywhere. But another voice inside me said, "You survived once, you can survive again." This chapter of my life was not over. Not yet. Chapter 7. The message that changed everything. The message on my phone felt like a knife touching my skin. "Did you miss me?" I stared at it again and again. My hands shook so much that I almost dropped the phone. I whispered, "How did he find me?" My voice sounded small, even to myself. Laura rushed to my side when she saw my face. "Madeline, what happened?" I showed her the phone. She read the message and covered her mouth. "He should not know where you are. You came here quietly. No one followed you." Her voice shook, and that scared me even more. We called the police. They came fast and took screenshots. One officer said, "This man wants you afraid. He wants control." I whispered, "He already has it." The officer looked at me gently and said, "Not anymore, you're not alone now." His kindness made my eyes fill, and I turned my face so he wouldn't see my tears. When they left, Laura sat beside me. She said, "You are safe with me." I nodded, but inside, I still felt like someone was watching me. I held my phone tight as if it was a shield. I whispered, "Why didn't he just leave me alone?" Laura squeezed my hand and said, "Because sick people don't need a reason." That night, I tried to rest on the couch, but my chest felt heavy. Every vibration of the phone made me jump. When my phone finally buzzed again, my heart dropped. The second message said, "You changed houses, but you didn't change your habits." I froze. My breath stopped for a moment. I whispered, He sees me. Laura grabbed the phone and said, "No, he is guessing. He doesn't know anything for sure." But her voice didn't sound confident. It sounded like fear pretending to be brave. Before we could call the police again, a third message came. "I told you. You trust too fast." My eyes filled instantly. I felt like I was dissolving from the inside. I said, "Why does he keep saying that?" Laura hugged me tightly. "Because he wants to break you, and I won't let that happen." The police returned, checked the street, checked the porch, checked the yard, nothing. One officer said softly, "He may not be close. He may just be trying to scare you." I said, "It's working." When they left again, Laura made tea, but my hands were too shaky to hold the cup. She said softly, "You survived him once. You will survive again." I whispered, "I am tired of surviving. I want peace." She touched my shoulder and said, "Peace will come, not tonight, but it will." Hours passed slowly. I watched the clock. I watched the door. My body stayed tense the whole time. I felt like if I blinked too long, something bad would happen. I kept thinking about his face, the calm smile, the way he watched me like he knew my thoughts. Laura went to her room for a moment, and I sat alone on the sofa. It was only a minute, but fear filled that minute completely. I whispered, "Please let this stop." I didn't know who I was speaking to, God, fate, or my own shaking heart. Then my phone buzzed again. I felt sick. I lifted it with trembling fingers. It was one line, simple, cold, sharp. "I will see you soon." I felt everything inside me collapse. My breath broke. My hands went numb. I whispered, "No, no." Laura ran from her room when she heard my voice. She held my face and said, "Look at me. You are not alone this time." But my eyes were fixed on the screen. The message kept glowing like a warning. In that moment, I understood something painful and real. This story was not ending. It was only changing shape. Chapter 8. The Warning. I kept staring at the last message until the words felt carved inside my mind. "I will see you soon." My breath shook, and I felt my chest tighten like someone was holding it from inside. Laura took the phone from my hand and said, "Madeline, look at me. He wants to scare you. That's all." But her voice trembled. Even she was afraid. I held her arm and whispered, "He knows where I am. He knows how I think." My voice felt thin, weak. She pulled me close and said, "You are safe with me. You are not alone." I nodded, but inside I felt like something had cracked, something deep. We called the police again. They asked for the screenshots. They said someone would patrol the street for the next few nights. One officer told me, "He is trying to break your confidence. Don't let him win." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to feel strong. But fear does not listen to strength. Fear listens to memories. After the officers left, the house felt heavy. Laura sat beside me and held my hands tightly. She whispered, "You survived him once. You will survive again. I promise." I tried to breathe slowly. I said, "I don't want to fear every sound. she said. Then let's face the sounds together. Later that night, I sat on the couch with a blanket around my shoulders. My phone was on the table. I kept looking at it, afraid it would buzz again. Laura made tea and sat beside me. For a moment, it felt peaceful. I whispered, "Do you think he's close?" She said, "I don't know, but he will not touch you. Not while I'm here." There was silence for a long moment. I finally said, "Why me, Laura?" She touched my shoulder gently and answered, "Because you opened your heart. Because you trust." I looked down and whispered, "And that almost destroyed me." She said, "But it didn't. You're still standing." I leaned back, tired. My body felt weak. My mind felt heavier. I said softly, "I don't want to run my whole life." Laura nodded. "You won't. This will end. We will make sure it does." Her voice gave me a small light inside the darkness. Just when I felt a little calmer, my phone buzzed again. My whole body froze. Laura grabbed it before I could. She read the message. Her eyes widened. She whispered, "Oh, God." I whispered, "What does it say?" She showed me the screen. "Stop telling people about me." A cold feeling ran through my body. I whispered, "He knows everything. He hears everything." Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. I covered my face and said, "He is inside my life even when he is gone." Laura hugged me tight. "He is trying to control your fear. Don't give him that power." But fear had already found its place deep, sharp, heavy. Laura called the police again. They said they would trace the number. They said they would try to find him. I heard them talking, but everything felt far away. I whispered, "What if he never stops?" Laura held my hand and said, "Then we will not stop either." I looked at the phone again. The screen felt like a warning, a silent one, a cruel one. I whispered, "I just want my life back." Laura said, "You will get it back, one step at a time."
Whether you're starting your English journey or improving your skills, our stories will help you understand English naturally. Listen, read along, and enjoy learning every day. Glowing star. Bell, don't forget to subscribe channel Basic English Story and turn on notifications.